Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson. Welcome back to my beautiful channel. I'm so excited to present the great, the one and only Dr. Michael Salla on my channel today. Hello, Dr. Michael Salla.
Hi, Danny. Great to be on your show.
It's so lovely to have you here. Now, earlier today, you gave us your week in review from your channel, Exopolitics Today. Now, for those out there, it's unlikely you've never heard of Dr. Salla, but if you haven't, wow, are you in for a treat? This man, for the last 30 years, has been putting so much research and evidence of ET craft, ET civilizations, information on the solar system, corrupt governments, corrupt militaries, and so much more. Has a massive academic background, but more so the huge heart and the loving being that Dr. Michael Salla has become to all of us. I'm just so honored to have you here, sir. And again, you know, you and I are friends off camera, and you every week do your week in review, which is a roundup of things that you see on Twitter. I'm not ready to be corralled into calling it X yet. And you brought a report together, and one of the things you shared today, which I'd love you to comment on, please, is the Pentagon that everyone believes in, basically put out a report that 30 people who gave testimonials of witnessing extraterrestrials, extraterrestrial craft, etc., the Pentagon have decided that none of those testimonials hold up, and therefore they're not accepted. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, that was a very interesting part of this historical report that the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office released just over a week ago. And in that report, it describes how there had been interviews conducted with up to 30 individuals who were talking about their involvement in various programs to do with UFOs, reverse engineering, non-human intelligence, and it made the point that there was no empirical evidence supporting any of their claims, which, if anyone is familiar with the way in which special access programs are run, especially those programs that are at the higher end of classification, which is they have a category called unacknowledged special access programs. And then they have another one that's called waived unacknowledged special access programs. And they're so secretive that you cannot even admit that the program exists. And any information about it is not going to be shared through various oversight mechanisms in the US Congress. So you have these 30 witnesses there, some of which say that they have been part of these waived special access programs, and they are giving testimony. And of course, they're not going to have empirical evidence because empirical evidence is illegal. If you have empirical evidence of these special access programs that are officially denied to exist, then you're breaking the law. So it really is, I think, just so deceptive, so disingenuous to say that these 30 witnesses lack any kind of empirical evidence, because the nature of the classified programs that they have had access to or seen are things that you cannot simply take the evidence out of. And we know two witnesses so far that have identified themselves. One is David Grush, and he's well known because he, of course, was part of this congressional hearing in July of last year where he talked about his involvement interviewing people. And another one is this attorney, Dani Sheehan, who talked about his involvement in 1977. And in Dani Sheehan's case, it was clear that he was taken into this secure facility at the James Madison building in Washington, D.C. It was it was a basement facility, very secure, armed guards. You know, he had to give up his briefcase and all of that. So he couldn't take anything out, in or out apart from just a notebook that he carried on him. And he says on that notebook, he sketched some drawings of the ETs in pictures that he saw of the craft that had been recovered. And he took those out. He just did a tracing of those, and he took those out. He was able to sneak those out. But it's quite clear that, you know, these people that have access to these programs they can't have empirical evidence. It's illegal. And in Dani Sheehan's case, he said he passed it on to the headquarters of the Jesuit organization in the United States. So so for this report to say these 30 witnesses lack empirical evidence, and not to acknowledge that, wow, these are eyewitnesses, that these things go on. If you have 30 eyewitnesses to something going on, then that's a slam dunk case. But in this AARO report, they're saying, well, these 30 witnesses don't have empirical evidence, so we're not going to acknowledge any of it.
Yeah, it's a horror show. So I've got a message for the Pentagon. I'd like you to understand that there are two definite, very strong eyewitnesses. They are former space program recruitees or abductees with long-standing proof going back millennia, many, many years. And also their names are Tony Rodriguez and Jean-Charles Moyen. They are veterans of military space programs. They exist, they are here, they're on this platform, they're speaking at the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection this year again. They are, for me, and many people I know and trust and love, are two of the most important eyewitness, eye accounts, physical interaction in hidden programs, space programs, etc. So the names are Tony Rodriguez and Jean-Charles Moyen, who was the Frenchman who was on the Solaris, which is a French spacecraft that connects up to the American, as we know, the Solar Warden, the military space program that has existed, and many countries have signed accords to join. Now, let's take a moment, Dr. Salla, to mention I always laugh at this word. It's so naughty and so out of order, in my opinion, UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, or underwater aquatic product. This is the mind control of the insanity of those that think they run the world to try and divert us away from saying UFO, which you've always said, gonna say it, UFO, 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 ho. And the UAP thing came in to try and again take control of something that they've lost control of. Now, with your information today, you mentioned the UAP Disclosure Act and it being gutted. Can you share a bit more of what you meant there, please?
Sure. Well, there was a proposal, a bill that was passed in the Senate unanimously. It was called the UAP Disclosure Act for 2023, and it envisaged creating a mechanism for disclosure of the truth behind UFOs, non-human intelligence, and so forth. And it was going to create an agency, actually a review board, a 9-person review board that would have subpoena power and that would have the power of eminent domain, so they could go in and get the information wherever it was, in whether it was in a military department, whether it was in a corporation or in some kind of private holding facility, that they would have subpoena power and eminent domain to be able to go in there and get that, because they realized, the people that put this UAP Act together realized that unless you have the power of the government and law behind you, you cannot just simply write a letter to, say, Lockheed Martin Skunk Work and say, oh, we heard that you're working on a top secret project involving reverse engineering some captured alien spacecraft that you have in your possession. We want you to share the files with us, and Skunk Works will just ignore you. But if you have subpoena power, or you have you assert eminent domain, you can actually have law enforcement go in there to break into that office and to get what it is that you want. So that was proposed, and it was gutted at the 11th hour even though there was strong bipartisan support within the Congress for the passage of this UAP Act. At the end of the day, it was gutted because some people associated with the aerospace corporations, people involved in leadership positions in the House Intelligence and the House Armed Services Committees, that they decided that they would block this UAP Disclosure Act, that they would take out the power of subpoena, the power of eminent domain, and take out that review board. So what you had left at the end was a gutted act, which really was just all about creation of a UAP records collection within the National Archives, which is a kind of step forward. but it's such a small step compared to what would have been achieved if you actually had the UAP Disclosure Act passed in full. And so right now, as it stands, this UAP Disclosure Act, some members of Congress are saying, "Oh, we're gonna push it again as a standalone act and try and get it passed through both branches of government." So we'll see if something happens. But honestly, I don't think that disclosure is going to happen through official legislation or enactments. I think that the deep state has shown that it can sabotage whatever good, well-meaning people in Congress plan to do. And so I suspect we're going to have something along the lines of, the ET showing up, space arcs showing up, inner Earth civilizations revealing themselves. It's going to be, what the officials call catastrophic disclosure, but I think that's probably where we're heading.
Yeah, it's incredible. And again, it's so wonderful. It's so empowering for people to understand that now we have so much more light on the planet. People are awakening internally to their own memories. And there's so much to say with that. Now, this week I interviewed a man who was for 27 years a Air Force person. He left as a master sergeant. His name is Jim Goodall. He was very close friends with John Lear from the Learjet family. And John Lear believed in UFOs. He knew they were in existence. And Jim Goodall received the dying man who was head of Skunk Works at the time, a man called Ben Rich. Ben Rich told Jim Goodall 27 years ago or so that they had the power to take ET home. Imagine that as a statement. The head at the time, the president of Skunk Works, Ben Rich, admitted this to Jim Goodall, and I had him testify on my channel yesterday. It's coming out in a couple of days. And some of the other stuff that he also witnessed in the military establishments and environments. And now Jim Goodall is known more as being a military historian, and he's a fascinating man, but it all links and leads into, and he was great friends with Bob Lazar too, and still is, and really kind of vouched for his personality this week too. So that's an interesting aspect, because we got to bring the, and again, it's listening to somebody from 70 years ago, 27 years ago plus, who's been in the military, who saw some of the planes being made, who saw some of the advance, the jump in technology that a lot of the personnel couldn't understand. We know we got off-planet help. We know that, so it's interesting to hear the line that a lot of military personnel are given. And when Jim Goodall asked the other president recently about, I thought I'd written his name down, about does he know anything about UFO technology? The man categorically said, no, not at all, have no access to it, no understanding of it, and that could be right or wrong. But as we know, the presidents often aren't even given the top secret access to things happening on our planet, because they're not running the world. They're not running the world. That's old news. Okay, let's move on to some of the other things we're here to talk about today. One of the things, again, on your thing that I loved was that Space Force's budget now exceeds NASA's, which it's high time that happened, because honestly, no one believes half the things NASA says anymore. They've been caught with their pants down, telling lies, repressing information, and Space Force, seemingly in your research, has been given the higher budget now. What do you think we can expect to see from that?
Well, I think we see the writing on the wall that the budget of Space Force is going to continue to grow rapidly. Right now, it's $30 billion a year. NASA's budget is $25 billion a year. Just to get an idea, the US Air Force's budget, I think it's around $210 billion a year. So Space Force's budget's going to continue to grow because they're going to start absorbing and integrating all of the secret space program assets, like flying triangles, flying rectangles, the flying saucers, that were part of the Air Force's secret space program, but they were all funded by the CIA through this kind of illicit black budget that the CIA has of approximately $1 trillion. So, it's all about following the money. And I think part of the rationale for creating Space Force is that they want to fund future space combat operations, not through illicit CIA funding, which comes from kind of like these illicit activities, drug trade, white collar crime, human trafficking, shipping illegal arms all over the world, that they want to fund it through normal congressional appropriations. And so that means that you need to get the American public on board that, Space Force needs to be funded because we need to buy all these shiny, brand new flying triangles from Lockheed or Northrop Grumman or Boeing, however they're going to spin that out. Because they're not going to, I don't think they're going to say, oh, we've had a secret space program. The Air Force has had a secret space program going back to the 1960s and 70s. They're not going to say that. What they're going to do is say, look, Skunk Works has developed this incredible anti-gravity technology. We're going to call it a TR3B or a TR7X or whatever. And they're going to roll it out as something brand new. And Space Force is going to say, oh, build me 100 of those. We want to set up 8 squadrons of flying triangles to defend the Earth and the Moon from kind of space threats. And so that's going to cost a lot of money. And so Space Force is going to tell Congress, oh, we need $200 billion to be able to set up, so many squadrons of flying triangles flying. That's what's coming. I mean, but it's being done in a way where they're not going to admit, oh, we've had these things for decades and we funded it all through the CIA's black budget. Now they're going to do it. They're going to do it, make it seem as though, oh, this has all been set up recently, and we're going to fund it through congressional appropriations. So I think Space Force's budget's going to grow, the NASA budget's going to decrease, and corporations are going to spend more and more in space. So it's going to be a future where you're going to have space affairs dominated by corporations and military organizations like Space Force, Space Command, and then eventually you're going to have a global space command. That's already happening. The US is already setting up a kind of equivalent of a NATO for space operations. It's called the Combined Space Operations. At the moment, it has like the Five Eyes nations, including France, including Germany, and Japan has recently signed on. So that's going to be the future, kind of like Starfleet. It'll whatever name they give it, but it'll be kind of like, whether it'll be a UN Space Command, an Earth Alliance Space Command, but it'll be a unified Space Command. And yeah, that's being all set up right now.
Let's hope the UN have zero to do with it, or NATO. Now, it gives me such delight in hearing you share these things, because I come from, as you know, space manufacturing background for many years, where I was the one recruiting the senior scientists, the production engineers, the management level. It was all very much Kanban, kind of Japanese Six Sigma management system, manufacturing system. I saw so many great people crushed, had their funding taken away, due to influence from space industry, the European Space Agency, NASA also. And I'm so happy to see this different shaking off of the repression that was into this freer, more fitting understanding of humanity, populace, and how we move forward with all of the things that we know, and nobody being repressed anymore. Now we're going to move on to this incredible book. This is book 9 of your Secret Space Program series. Now, I told you, I have not wanted to finish it. It is so bloody exciting, Dr. Michael Salla. It's so exciting. It's basically you and our beautiful friend JP, who is an Army insider. He's a US Army insider, and these are his missions. And this is the second book he wrote of his missions. And JP is somebody that we've come to love and look forward to his updates on your channel on Exopolitics today, Dr. Michael Salla. Can you please give us a synopsis on who JP is, how you met, and why you feel his input and reporting into you? Because in the past, people have come to you and they've lied, openly lied. Why would we believe JP? What do you think is so different about him, please?
Well, I first was contacted by JP back in 2008. He started to tell me about his contact experiences with extraterrestrials. So we just maintained phone communications for years. And then in 2017, there had been a change. He was living in Tampa, Florida at the time, and he was starting to send me photographs of the flying triangles or the flying rectangles that he was taken on. And prior to that, he had told me about meeting government military personnel when he was taking on these different crafts. So it was clear from 2008 to 2017, he's giving me these kind of accounts of being taken on these craft, either piloted or owned by extraterrestrials or part of a secret space program, an Air Force secret space program. So, I just took all that in. I just recorded it all, but I was still not convinced because he was so vague on so many details. I just wanted to just keep the overall chronology of it all. And then in 2017, he started sending me all these photos, really good photos of the different craft he was taken on. And so this was amazing because there's very few contactees that can actually have photographs of the craft that they're being taken on. They say he had that. And it was clear that he was being encouraged to share these photographs with me by military personnel at MacDill Air Force Base, which is the home of Special Operations Command, and that they were encouraging him to take the photos. They were actually telling him, to look up and there's a craft and to take the photos. So it was clear that the covert operations people want disclosure to happen. They were helping him, encouraging him to reveal what was going on. So, I describe all of that in the first volume of the book. And so in over the course of the subsequent years, JP decided in 2019 that he would join the army. There are reasons for why he did that. I describe it in volume 1 of the book. But essentially, he felt that he would have more access to the classified programs because twice before he was taken to these covert programs by US Air Force operatives, but the people in charge of those programs said, "Oh, he's a private civilian. I'm not going to let him come in here and to see what we got." So because he was a private civilian, he could be denied access to some of the more kind of like deeper layers of the compartmented projects. So he joined the army, and now he's been going on missions since after joining the army in 2019, and he's been given access, and he's been able to go off planet to be part of missions. He was part of the missions to greet the arrival of the Cedars, and the Cedars is something that Elena Danan has written about extensively, because JP actually was part of the first US Space Command mission that was sent out to greet the arriving Cedars that parked themselves around Jupiter. So he was part of that. And so he's just shared a lot of information. And he's still sending me the occasional photo showing, especially when he's taken on the ET craft. The ET craft allow him, or the ETs allow him to take photographs of the craft as it's leaving, because the electronics don't work. This is something that JP has described, that the electronics don't work when you're too close to the craft. But when the craft is leaving, he can take photos, and he's taken photos. And I've shared those photos on my website.
Yeah. And you shared them the first year at our conference, Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, too. Amazing. And again, they seem to have a warped energy around them because that's their energy field. Which is why isn't it clear? They're really clear ones. They're the military man-made, handmade ones. But the ones that JP has shown us, that you've obviously expressed and shared, are the real ones indeed. A little bit more on JP here. His father, and again, in our desire for people to really gather their own strength and not just follow you and follow JP, but to really acknowledge themselves in their growth, JP's dad himself had a lot of different paranormal ET experiences, and so proving that it's intergenerational for many people. And you met with his dad and you spoke to him, didn't you?
I have, yeah. I spoke to his dad. We had a long Skype conversation, And his dad told me about an incident that happened in Puerto Rico, because that's where JP's parents come from, Puerto Rico. And there's a big lake in the center of Puerto Rico there. And JP's father was near the lake, and he saw a very large craft coming out of the water and then just hovering there. So he saw this craft, and then he had a missing time experience. And that kind of like began for him a series of anomalous experiences over the subsequent decades. So he's had several of these anomalous experiences. So JP's father was chosen, and I think this is part of the reason why you have people like JP playing these very important roles, because I think JP is, I think he's more than just a star seed. I mean, like we know star seeds are very real and they happen all the time. Many of us have chosen to incarnate, but people like JP have decided to play very important roles in terms of being conduits for a lot of this information getting out. And because it's necessary for JP to be exposed to a lot of really strange environments, whether we're talking about extraterrestrial spacecraft, whether we're talking about underground civilizations, whether we're talking about ancient advanced technologies, uh, that your genetics have to be durable enough to be able to withstand those vibrations. So it seems that JP's father, I think, was identified as someone with the necessary genetic foundations for his descendant to be able to do things that many of us couldn't do. And and we know that. For example, in the Radu Cinema series, the Transylvania Sunrise book series, he describes, if you don't have the right frequency, the right vibration, as you're approaching some of these ancient technologies, they typically have kind of frequency barriers or protective mechanisms in place. And if your vibration isn't high enough, it'll kill you. I mean, straight out, it'll kill you. And that's what the military has learned. That's why militaries are recruiting contactees, because they know that normal personnel get killed or get severe injuries. So they recruit contactees. So that's why they recruited JP. They desperately wanted him to be part of their program, and that really that began with his father being chosen, I think, by the ETs as someone with the right genetics who would then give birth or spawn a child who would be playing a very special role in introducing these incredibly advanced technologies to the world. And I think that's what JP is doing.
It's so true. And again, thank you for laying it out that way as well. That the army pursued JP because they'd somehow come across his, abilities, maybe because you've been followed for much of your life and your career as a rabble rouser. You're not a rabble rouser. You're just a brilliant historian, researcher, and you're so much more, and you're so beloved. And you have such a clear, intelligent way of delivering information, which we so appreciate. And there's something also with JP. It's funny because the two of you remind me a little bit. I know we have other different star seedings and energies that we connect to, but a little bit of an Arcturian with both of you. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was getting my notes together for our conversation today. Super, super loving and super gentle and super patient. And, it's great. So great. So we've covered the intergenerational, because he also has family members in his current generation in military situations who are also part of these covert experiments or travels. Now, here's information. The timing of JP coming with you, the timing of you and Alex Collier and me and Elena Danan and Tony Rodriguez and Jean-Charles Moyan and Melanie Charret in particular, our group finding each other, has really kind of dovetailed into timing of information landing on the planet, and also, more importantly, being validated, being confirmed as correct by different sources. One such event being the awakening of a certain sleeping giant. Can you give us some information on the sleeping giant and the Florida area known as Ponte de Leon?
Right. JP, has been on several missions to this underground civilization in Florida near the Ponce de Leon State Park there. And he went underground to this civilization that is populated by these ant beings. And they had a area there with that looked very pristine, with this white tree that was drawing water up from a nearby stream, and then dripping water that was that would rejuvenate people. So that's where, we kind of made the connection. Oh, maybe this is what the whole fountain of youth is all about, that this water literally restores youth. And that seems to be part of the kind of like the whole Anunnaki heritage. And it's important to understand that there's not just one fountain of youth, there's several of them. So in the Sumerian records, they describe the person who was in charge of the fountain of youth, or the tree of life, as one of the Anunnaki called Ningish Zida. And so in communications with JP and with Elena Danan, we worked out that this sleeping giant in Florida is actually Ningish Zida, who's also known as Thoth, or in the Americas, he's known as Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, that he's in this stasis chamber thousands of years old, and that his body, it's like it's an avatar body, and that the consciousness is coming, or in the process of coming back into that body. And what we'll have at some point when he fully awakens and becomes active again is we'll have someone who will share this ancient wisdom with us. And I think it's going to be a lot to do with alchemy, with the power of nature, plants, trees, herbs, all of those things whose kind of like influence and power has been suppressed by the pharmaceutical medical industry, that doesn't want us to learn about the power of herbs and plants and so forth. And I think those kind of alchemical secrets will be released because, yeah, I mean, these plants have incredible powers, and the trees themselves. I mean, JP described this tree that would leak water from its branches, how that would rejuvenate, and the sap from that tree could instantaneously heal and so forth. So, yeah, many secrets. So I think this is what's going to happen: is as these sleeping giants come back, especially those associated with the kind of wisdom school of the Anunnaki gods. We know of Enki or Ea, Ningish Zida, Thoth. That school, these were the wisdom keepers. These were the ones that sought wisdom and valued wisdom, as opposed to the other faction who are all into power and control. And we see that dynamic playing out all the time. So, yeah, those sleeping giants, there are some of them, at least 7 of them, that are associated with the Enki or Ea faction, and that they are going to come forward and release some of these advanced technologies, or the knowledge of like alchemy and healing, rejuvenation. And there's also another sleeping giant in Nippur in Iraq, who is someone that was the chief Anunnaki engineer for Enlil's spaceport there in Nippur. So he's also in the process of waking up, and he allied himself with the Ea faction as well. So, yeah, really exciting times, because I think what's going to really be very important as we step into this new age of disclosure is that we as private citizens, we start to assert our power and our authority, because we are connected to these different advanced extraterrestrials or groups, and the knowledge we bear that knowledge, because the people that are in governments or in the military, in a way, they're parasitic. I mean, we look at them and we say, oh, they've got so much power and authority over us, but they're really parasitic, because all their power comes from those of us that have the gift that have the knowledge to be able to directly access and interface with these ancient technologies, with these ancient beings, to be able to understand the knowledge, and to have the purity of heart to be able to go into places that are only meant for those that are pure of heart. And those in the military and government, they're parasitic because they're always looking for those of us that have these gifts, because that's their key to power. And so we, as private individuals, we have to come together and we have to empower one another, which is why I really am so supportive of your Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference, because that is, to me, a harbinger of what's to come, that we private individuals become emancipated, we become fully cognizant of our power, of our connection to our star families, and we are going to be bringing this knowledge, this incredible technology directly to the people, and bypassing all of the sycophants, all of the parasites, all of the psychopaths that are part of the military industrial complex. And so it's on us. So that's I think why your conference is going to be a really important one this year in Denver, because Colorado is really the belly of the beast when it comes to these secret space programs.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much to say there. Plus, Nikola Tesla set up in Colorado Springs, and that was a massive, he built his tower there, his great tower that was taken down, and, in information repressed. And as you know, the nearest airport to our beautiful conference location is Denver. There's no way I would host it in Denver town itself. Found the energy really heavy there, a lot of nefarious activities there, but it's held outside of Denver in a town called Westminster. Again, to double confirm that. Now, going back to the giant, again, and you referenced GISIC, the conference that this is our third year now. You'll be there again this year. Elena Danan will be there. Alex Collier will be there again in the audience with us. These great people, Jean-Charles Moyen, Tony Rodrigues, Melanie Charret, Dr. Christiane Northrup, Dr. Lee Merritt, the military doctor that came out whistleblowing, and others. And all around this timing of me creating the conference, having had already met most of you, the dovetailing and the beauty, and JP coming in, and you guys going and starting the disclosure broadcasts on your channel, and then Elena bringing her information, and then Dan Willis bringing the frill, who's also speaking this year, showing us the off-planet frill energy, and then my living in Costa Rica and connecting with a beautiful man called Quetzal Shah, who is his English is as terrible as my Spanish. And I met up with him, and I invited him to speak at our conference the first year, and he translated an ancient chant, Akuria Mate, for you, that JP had heard Mayan soldiers, Aztec Mayan soldiers, singing in one of the space arcs that one of the expeditions that JP went on. And we'll go back to what space arcs are in a minute. But then we understood what Akuria Mate meant, and it was opening the portals from heaven to earth, to inner earth too, connecting lovingly. And then I went on, or before all of this, I was in Mexico with Quetzal Shah. I went to Chichen Itza with him, and I witnessed the spirituality in this man, the ancient lineage he comes from. He believes himself to be part of Quetzalcoatl. And he showed me the space behind the Sun Temple where he first had a Pleiadian interaction with an ET. I went under the rope and went wandering back there by myself. I'm a bit of a naughty one like that, but nobody died and nothing happened. Nothing was broken or tampered with. Anyway, so I even went into the cenotes, which are giant, massive holes in the ground, enormous holes full of water, sinkholes, if you will, cenotes, Cenote. And I went swimming in at least 2 of those cenotes with Quetzal Shah in Mexico, in the Maya. And he was not looking for audience. He was so connected to inner earth, to the spirituality of the land, that he would be off chanting and singing mantras, and witnessed him on dry land at Chichen Itza doing that, and coming up to me when I was tuning into one of the temples there by myself, just putting his hand on my back, and I received like an electrical charge from him. And again, bringing Quetzal Shah to the conference to bring all of that information together, and then us coming to be told via JP too that around this time, the giant that we're speaking of here, Jehuti, Thoth, etc., was literally awakening, and JP had laid physical eyes on him and drew him. And there also, JP said that the giant's skull was about 6 times as large as JP's. I mean, JP hasn't got the biggest noggin in the head, but he's a pretty well-built guy. And he said that the giant had hands, 6 times the size of him too. But yes, it's all Elena Danan, Dr. Michael Salla, JP, Jean-Charles Moyen, Tony Rodriguez, myself, and others, and Ketsa Shah. We all brought this dovetailing of beauty and energy and all these ancient legends that actually are real-time happenings in this moment all together. It's just quite lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's not coincidence. I think there's a kind of like a plan that's unfolding. I think one of the things we discussed at the last GC conference was the kind of like star groups coming together, that people would find their star family, and I think so. I think those of us, especially who met each other at the GC conference, the first one, and so forth. We recognize one another. I mean, that was happening so often, and I think that's part of the awakening, that we have a group that we typically come in with, that we're not isolated, that that was the old way of thinking. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, when people first started to think of star seeds, that it was all about, the individual, you're from another world and you come here to spread light and love and higher knowledge and so forth. And that's true. But now we understand that actually we don't come as individuals, we come as groups. And we, through life, make connections to other members of the group. And now, at this time of the Great Awakening, we are making this full connection to our group to be able to lay the foundation for this new world that's coming. And there's huge challenges, as you know, for what's coming. But I think we, as star groups, by supporting each other, by giving each other a kind of like platform, or what's needed to be able to get the message across, or to be able to develop the resources to be able to do what they're supposed to be doing. This is going to unfold in a way that's going to be very, very beautiful. So, I think it's not accidental that all of these people that you just mentioned, discovering one another, making the connections. And I think that's really the beauty of conferences. I mean, I only go to one conference in the US a year now, and that's the GC conference. And I do that because I feel that's really the best way for me to connect with people that I feel are part of my star family.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Let's take a step back and go more into the space arcs. Maybe we could reference the very first one, one of the first ones that JP referenced. This is when the Aztec soldiers were singing a Curie Mate, were able to go into a globulous orb that was basically water, plasma water. Can you give us an insight into what space arcs are and how this one or those others we've known about were actually accessed?
Well, space arcs are kind of like giant biodomes that on the outside they look like spaceships, just big, kind of like not quite spherical, kind of more an ovoid shape. And inside, they can house many thousands of people. And they have advanced technologies. And as I understand it, these space arcs they're ancient, that when human colonies were established on Earth many millennia ago, what would happen would be that a space arc would arrive. The crew from that space arc would get out, and there would be some kind of hybridization experiment, and there'd be a kind of a colony that eventually is established using the space ark as like a mothership, a mother lode of advanced technologies, and for developing a society and getting it started off. So this apparently is one of the functions of a space ark. And another function is that it actually provides a place to evacuate the beings, or firstly the crew, and also those that are part of the genetic experiment that the crew is responsible for. So they can get thousands of people taken away very quickly. And as I understand it, that there are currently 22 space arcs that were built specifically for the different human extraterrestrial genetic experiments on Earth. And the Atlantic space arc is one of these, that it was associated with the Atlantean civilization, that it was a repository of advanced technology that Atlantis used to kind of launch itself as a great power, a great planetary power. And then once the cataclysms hit, the space ark played that other role of evacuation, and eventually it submerged, and it's been in stasis in the bottom of the Atlantic for thousands of years. But it began to activate in 2021 when the fleets of the Sea to ships arrived in our solar system. And it began to activate along with other space arcs. And so JP, he's been on currently 6 missions now into the Atlantic space arc. And in each of those missions, he does different things. One of the missions he described, going in there with these Aztec Mexican people who began singing Mate, and we didn't know what that was at the time. They began singing Mate, and what JP and the others observed, it was a joint American and Chinese and kind of like Mexican mission. And what JP observed was that there was a kind of time dilation effect operating in the space arc, and as you wanted to go into different areas, the time dilation effect would get stronger and stronger. So it would be harder and harder to move through. It would be like moving through molasses. It's just, you couldn't do it. Eventually you would give up. But what they noticed was that the Aztec Mexican Indians, they're singing and dancing and Mate, because for them this was like, the fulfillment of prophecy, being in that space arc. And they were able to just sing and dance their way deep into the space arc. And other groups like the Chinese faction or group, the soldiers there tried to follow the Mexicans, and they got very upset because the time dilation effect stopped them from being able to follow the Mexicans. And so yeah, JP has described that and many other missions into the Atlantic space arc.
It's so exciting. That was quite an interesting story too, with saying the Chinese were very grumpy that they couldn't like physically move, and then the Mayan, the Aztec, Spanish-speaking soldiers, they saw the hieroglyphs on the wall, didn't they? They were translating what they were seeing, and they were so overjoyed to see, as you said, the prophecy that they've been shown outside, on land, inside the space ark. And it allowed them access. And you also shared very beautifully earlier, sadly, that the military have been trying to find people like JP with a certain DNA, with a certain psychic ability, clairvoyant, long generational ancestral heritage, and use them to access. But they're getting their ass kicked everywhere, from what we can see, that this is being thwarted in many ways. And also the people that have the ability can actually shut that down, can control that. And sadly, there's a lot of blackmail, a lot of this, a lot of that, but the foul behaviors are definitely being on the table. People are being named, people are being tried. There's lots and lots of things going on and happening right now to change the repression of a planet such as ours, that at one point the reptilians and greys thought they were going to enslave. Now they've been removed. We're left with the Neptiles that are still running things in certain areas, but they are failing so quickly. Another reason why we can now bring all the information to the fore, and also help people marry together the realities that we are a spacefaring planet. We have brothers and sisters and civilizations. It always was, always will be. But there was an element, at least a century or two, that where we were taken away from that reality, and now we're bringing it back. We're landing it back. Let's talk a little bit about the ant people. I know we mentioned them briefly, but I loved hearing JP sharing with us the ant people. And again, we're so programmed to respond to, well, that's ridiculous, that's from a movie, that's a nonsense. We're programmed to feel stupid to even acknowledge there might be inner earth civilizations. Can you share a bit about the ant king and how it made you feel? Because you can feel in the words that you write, you can feel reading the conversations that you two have in this book. Elements, like I've got chills now, even just remembering how I felt the first time. So can you share something of that, please?
Right. Yeah. Well, the Ant King, I mean, that was a very interesting mission where JP says he was part of a squad of soldiers that went in, that he wasn't in charge of that particular mission. There was another soldier that was in charge of the mission. So they went down into this underground civilization where you have an ant people, or a race of insectoids that are very ancient. And so JP described the very large caverns where they lived. You could accommodate thousands of people in there. He says that they saw some humans down there, that wasn't just ant people, but these were humans that were apparently, that had been born there, that had been there for many, many years. They kind of like deduced that a lot of these people were somehow stranded, or they were unwanted, or somehow they ended up in that underground civilization, and that they had been supported, and eventually over the years they were able to breed, and they were welcome, and they were protected. And so, that kind of validates these legends of the ant people that you get from the Hopi Indians and the other kind of Native American tribes. I think the Anasazi, and that they talk about the transition from the third world to the fourth world, where at a time of great danger because of the earth changes and cataclysms, that they were given shelters. They were given shelter in these huge underground places by the ant people. So they described the ant people and drew them and so forth. So this is something that is well known to the Native Americans, and the ant people are one of the ancient underground civilizations that were part of what was many millions of years ago a genetic experiment on the surface of the planet, where you actually had intelligent insectoids on the surface of the planet. But over the course of many, many millions of years, there were earth changes, and so those insectoids went underground and established these huge colonies, and eventually humanity arrived. That story is told by our mutual friend who wrote a message from the Sasquatch, Sambo True Brother, where he described the different grand genetic experiments that were created by different extraterrestrial civilizations over the course of millions and millions of years, and that humanity is at the tail end of that. So we're the kind of babies on the planet, and the planet has all of these ancient civilizations and technologies going back hundreds of millions of years, and so the ant people are part of that. And so JP goes into this underground civilization. He encounters the ant, the king of that particular colony of ant people. He encounters the king, and the king says, "Oh, I want to talk to you. So tell the others to go away." And of course, JP wasn't in charge of that particular military mission. So the person in charge was very kind of like offended by that. It was like, "Well, I'm in charge. You should speak to me." And it's like, "No, I want to speak to him, to JP." And so the security took the rest of the soldiers away, and they were grumbling, mumbling, and they were very, very unhappy because the Ant King recognized that JP had a particular gift, that he had been in the space ark. So that was something important to the ant people. So yeah, so they shared information and they talked about different things and the history and so forth. So yeah, so JP at the end he gave me an update on that particular mission to the underground civilization of the Ant people, and described meeting one of the kings of the Ant people and how it was a very powerful experience for him, how he felt that this being was very majestic, and he instinctively just kind of, I think he kneeled in front of the king and just kind of acknowledged that he was a true king. You could feel that wisdom, that power, and I think that is very important too. There's something within us recognizes. There are a couple of things here, and I know we're both been interviewed or interviewed Sasha Stone, and he talks about this a lot, the divine kingship, that within us, we are capable of recognizing purity of soul, but also the majesty of the soul as well, that we can recognize both. And we need, that's what we need to cultivate. That's what we need to express, because that's the only way, Dani, that I think we, the people, are ever going to free ourselves from the sycophants or from the psychopaths, the people that control the militaries and the corporations and the governments, because they're all really very weak people at a soul level.
Yes.
Their power comes from having access to technology and hierarchies and manipulating and tricking people. But we individuals that have this purity of soul and have this majesty of soul that we can connect with, we are going to be the ones that are going to be, bringing about this this pure kingdom. I mean, Christ talked about it, that the innocent will one day dominate the earth, and that's where the purity of soul and also the majesty of the soul comes forward. And Sasha Stone talks about this, the return of the divine king. That's something that we as individuals, we are going to be part of that. So we are going to lead, I think, all of us that are part of this kind of movement. There's a movement here. We are going to lead a planetary awakening where we will free our entire planet from these psychopaths running the militaries and the corporations. Because at the end of the day, they are very weak people that have access to extraordinary destructive technologies. But we have the purity of soul, the majesty of soul, to be able to connect with the inner earth civilizations and with the visiting extraterrestrials and with Gaia herself. So all of those will recognize us. A 4-star general, I mean, that's just 4 stars on a lapel, and he has authority given to him by this military institution, which on the surface seems to be, wow, very powerful if you're in the presence of a 4-star general. But at the end of the day, if you look at the soul of this individual, these people are just power hungry. It's all about ego, and that was actually explained very clearly. Thorhan Aretian described it in this dispute between General Glenn Van Herk and General James Dickinson, the respective heads of NORAD and Space Command, just over a year ago. Here you have the Galactic Federation handing over a disclosure plan where humanity is going to be gifted with all of these incredible technologies and assistance from the Galactic Federation of Worlds. But these guys are kind of involved in a pissing contest. As I have jurisdiction here. No, I have jurisdiction. And Thorhan was commenting on the pettiness of that. But he was saying that is exactly the kind of personality that runs the militaries all over the world. And so we as private citizens, we need to go within, claim our power, and wrest back all of that authority from these people that are just, they're like children in a way, that just have all of these powerful toys, and their egos are off the charts, and they need to be taught humility.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, they all want to be bloody Napoleon Bonaparte. Yeah, it's quite pathetic. These senior generals, 4 5-star generals that we know have definitely been meeting with our Pleiadian brothers and sisters from the military factions on board the Excelsior, and their behavior is just indicative of the level and purity of their own souls. Clearly, that they wouldn't want to share with humanity, that their rank is clearly more important for some of these people than actually sharing with humanity what's been taken and held back. Absolutely. Now, talking about kings, I got zero respect, but the Ant King, I would definitely, oh my gosh. But kings on the planet, you know, we've got a king in England, King Charles, whatever, Trevor. The only place I've found him remotely interesting was when I used to play polo. When you play polo, you have to have at least 4 horses because you're galloping, turning, twisting, turning. And I played at Walmers Park, which is the park that he learned to play at. And then you end up in the circuit and you end up playing. Anyway, blah, blah. You have to be so brave to play polo. It is an insane game for nut jobs. And I got out. I didn't even make it to 0. It's like -1, -2, 0, and then up from there. But anyway, I had a moment of, and I met him, extraordinarily big hands. And, you know, I met quite a few of the members in different ways or whatever. And, you know, I wouldn't cross the street to say, hello, King, how are you? And one of the things I found so disturbing that JP shared was that King Charles apparently ordered for seeds to come from inner earth and be sent, and I couldn't get my head around it. The raging child in me at the injustice on my planet was like, no, that couldn't have happened. But something did in fact happen. Can you share with us that story, please?
Sure, that was from JP's first mission to this underground ant civilization in Florida near the Ponce de Leon Park. And he was given, or the mission, they were given this gift for surface humanity, while more in particular it was intended to be shared. It was for the people of America, really. And it was intended that it would be handed over to authorities in the US who would ensure that these seeds that were given, that were part of a gift, they came from the tree of life and other plants, things that would be able to prolong life, restore health, be an energy, a renewable energy source, and so forth. So plants can actually become a renewable energy source. So these were the gifts that were handed over to the mission. And what JP said was that 2 members of that mission took those gifts, especially the seeds of life, and took them over to England. And this was during, I think it was just in the waning days of Queen Elizabeth, before the well, actually no, I think Charles had become king by then. And so yeah, it was done under the orders of King Charles, because apparently this was something that was going to be very important for him in assuming his kind of ceremonial role as not only the King of England, and of course those British colonies, former colonies such as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and so forth, but that King Charles also was the occult leader of the planet, or would play a very important role in the occult leadership of the planet. So the British royal family and the Rothschild family, those 2 have very important power when it comes to the occult leadership of planet Earth. And so these seeds were somehow used and appropriated into whatever secret occult ceremonies that were being planned for King Charles's inauguration, and for him to be able to wield power. So yeah, so this was something that the ant people became very upset about, because this was a misuse of that gift, that those seeds were not to be taken out of the United States. The intent was that somehow they would be used for the benefit of the people, as opposed to something that would be exclusively used to prolong the power and the authority and the life of the occult leadership. And I think this is where we're entering into that phase of where the different ETs and the underground civilizations recognize that there are this power elite that control us, and I think they're going to help us break free of that.
Yeah. And again, there are people that are so devoted, as I once was, to the royal family, because you grow up and they're an extension of your daily life. You see them on TV all the time, and I was a nanny at some point living down the road from Kensington Palace, and one of the charges in my house played with Lady Gabriella Windsor, and they were all the apartments in Kensington Palace lead down to the same playroom, and they're playing with William and Harry. And again the polo thing later and stuff. So you just have this kind of affection that's inflicted on you because you don't really know anything else. And there's been so much that has come out. Indeed, reptilian ancestry. Talk about the Rothschilds. They've got way too much power in Britain. In Great Britain, the islands of Great Britain, an island, it's so small. It's such a small landmass on the planet with tentacles far reaching. But again, we must remember, those that don't know, the royal family, the ties to Germany, the Rothschilds, the Red Shield, the German and Austrian links that have come that we should pay attention to, because it isn't just the English British, or that Prince Philip, who married Queen Elizabeth, had Greek blood. Again, we've got to look at these ancestral bloodlines that all tie into each other, because as you say, they have had a leadership power across the top of the masses of humanity for far too long. Elena Danan pointed out that when the coronation occurred with King Charles, there's a certain ritual where there's a canopy that was put round, and she said normally in the past they would have gone into the back room to meet with the reptilians, and there would have been a blood ritual that occurred there. There were many different people giving their information during that time too. So I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't there. I witnessed it live on television with millions of other people, but there was so much input there. The seed had been taken. JP was witness to that. So I did find the whole thing extremely disturbing, and made me so angry that who the hell is King Charles to, commandeer these ancient seeds? How dare he? How very dare he? But the good news is they have since been returned, haven't they?
Well, that's right. They were returned, and I think the JP also described that the seeds, before they were returned to the United States, they played a role somehow in the discovery or the awakening of this giant in Anunnaki, the sleeping giant. Was Arjun? I think it was Arjun, who was the chief engineer for the Anunnaki space fleet, and he is buried there in Nippur, which was the capital of Enlil, or Yu. But he, Arjun, had, well, I guess he had switched allegiances, and he began to work with Ea, and so the seeds were taken there to awaken him, because that again is something that the secret space programs want. They want to know the Anunnaki secrets of advanced space flight and technologies. And again, this is where we get into this area where you've got these 4-star generals running these different commands and the secret space programs, and they just want new and more powerful toys. And we understand their mindset, right? And they're not evil people. They just, they have egos, and they want to get the best for whatever it is that makes their command operate at optimal efficiency. And that means getting the most powerful toys, the most powerful weapons and technologies. But we individuals, those that are pure of heart or have that kind of like that divine kingdom, or that divine element or kingship, that we are reclaiming that, or in the process of that, we are the ones that have access to these technologies. It's not the four-star generals. They need people like JP. They need people like Elena Danaan, like Jean-Charles Moyen, to be able to go into these places, to be able to interface with the technologies, communicate with the beings and say, hey, what's this technology for? How can we use it? And so, we saw, like with the seeds, it wasn't one of the Rothschilds or one of the Windsors that went down into that underground kingdom to get the seeds from the ant people. It had to be JP that had to be part of that mission for it to succeed. So once we understand that, we know we individuals, the pure at heart, the ones that are on a journey to reclaiming our divine kingship, we are the ones that have the power, not the psychopathic four-star generals, corporate presidents, political leaders that, try and trick us and impress us and frighten us and intimidate us. That it all comes to us.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know that we've been going for over an hour now, and this book, honestly, it is absolutely mind-blowing, breathtaking. It's emotional. It is everything that you would want a great book to be. And there are so many areas here, again, covering underground cities, giants, spaceports, space arcs, and space orbs. And recently, at our first GISIC conference? Chris Asson had put together a beautiful video on Elon Musk's rocket launch being dismantled. It was a big telemetry satellite that was going up that was for something to do with Facebook, and it was definitely something that the Galactic Federation of Worlds were not going to allow, and therefore they sent one of their orbs out, and it fired, and there's actual footage of it, and it blew up the telemetry, it blew up the rocket, and someone today mentioned, or maybe it was my brother last night on the phone, had a good old 2-hour chinwag with him on all things on the planet, on and off planet. He goes, well, if the ETs were here, then why wouldn't they have ended the nuclear this and that? I'm like, hello. They have prevented so much horror and trauma and terror, but again, us humans, as you say, we have a role, we have a job to do. We stand up and we take control, and we stop being, meek and timid in the corner, and recognize that there is no governing body that we see every day that is going to help us. They want it all for themselves. They've shown that they're ultimate failures. If there's one hungry, one cold, or a homeless person, as far as I'm concerned, you failed. And now we are taking it all back. We are revealing, we are exposing. And broadcasts like this are so important. Books like this are absolutely the Bibles of today, giving people the real information, helping them awaken. Because when you hear stories like this, when you read books, something happens to you. Something awakens within your cellular memory, your feeling, your emotional body, and it can't be put down again. It awakens. It's so beautiful in so many ways. Could you add anything before we come to a close on the orbs that we've come to understand have been coming out of the space arcs? Why are they doing that? What are they, and what is the purpose?
Right, with the orbs, JP's talked about that quite a bit, and it's also been a subject of the official investigations by the AARO office, because that was one of the things that was acknowledged that at a NASA meeting last year by the then head of the AARO office, Sean Kirkpatrick. He said that just over half of all UFO sightings that are occurring that have been reported are orbs. Now, previously, JP has said that the space arcs and the motherships and others have also said the same thing. Elena has mentioned the same thing, that the orbs are being released and that they are monitoring the planetary consciousness. And I think they're doing it because they are assessing where humanity is as a collective, because from the perspective of the extraterrestrials, they try and measure, they try and kind of like factor in the consciousness, not just of surface humanity, but of the planet herself, Gaia, and of course the subsurface civilizations here, and of course the different animal kingdoms as well. The whales, cetaceans, the the kind of like land animals, that all of that consciousness is somehow being monitored. And so they're trying to work out where we are as a planetary civilization. Are we something worth saving, preserving, helping, or are we something that is kind of like a virus that needs to be scoured and kind of like everything needs to be reset? So I think that the galactics are using the orbs to reach those conclusions. And so far, according to everything that I've heard, is that so far, we have kind of like factored in on the positive side of the ledger, that we're worth preserving, that there's enough compassionate, empathic, loving people on the planet to overbalance the destructive, psychopathic, pedophilic elites that are doing all of these terrible things on the planet. And they're only a small minority, but the vast majority of people are loving, empathic, they support families. And so that is what the extraterrestrials are monitoring through the orbs. And I think this is where we're going to get into this whole catastrophic disclosure, or full disclosure might be more appropriate, because they're looking at our consciousness of the planet, and they say, and they can look and they can say, oh look, humanity is ready for us to reveal ourselves, that the psychopathic elites that run the planet, they will never reveal us, or they'll reveal us in a way that only perpetuates their control and power. But if we reveal ourselves, then we will empower those people that have been kind of like on the fringes all their life, speaking truth. And so that's what I think is going to happen, that they're going to appear. And those of us that have these small podcasts all over the planet, talking about these, we're suddenly going to go from like, whatever it is, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 subscribers to a million, 10 million, 100 million subscribers, because all of a sudden they're going to look to us and say, oh, these are the people that were telling us the truth all along. And let's forget about the mainstream media. Let's forget about the psychopathic leadership. So I think that this is what's going to happen at some point. So I'm very, very optimistic that a process is in place, that the galactics are looking at our evolution as a species, and they want to help us. The private individuals that are pure of heart and are connected to our divine kingship, that we are ready to step forward and claim our true role on the planet as leaders, and as kind of like take it in the positive direction and rein in all of those people that are out of control, egotists, psychopaths.
Absolutely, absolutely. Beautifully, beautifully put. Well, we could go on for more hours because, as I said, there is so much in this great book, U.S. Army Insider Missions, by Dr. Michael Salla, number 9 in your Secret Space Program series, and your escapades and hearings from the great JP. Is there anything else that you would love to add as a message to the audience that will see this?
Well, I do regular podcasts, interviews. I do a webinar. I have a webinar coming up next Saturday. It's going to be called Crypto Terrestrials, and I'm going to do a deep dive into the history of these non-human inner Earth civilizations. In the past, I've talked about inner Earth civilizations, the human ones, Agartha, Telos, and so forth. So this will be my chance to kind of dive deep into that. So that'll be next week, my webinar. And of course, in September, I'm going to be going to Denver to be part of the GSIC conference. So I think people can still register. I don't know if the early bird is still there. So yeah, so you can register through the early bird, and I look forward to be part of the GSIC, which will be my only US conference for 2024.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited that you're coming back for a 3rd year to stand on that great stage and deliver the information uncensored, the things that we cannot say here, although we've said plenty today. but we cannot say and share every single thing. Plus, gathering of people, raising that energy, raising that consciousness. That's what happens at GISIC, Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. So, Michael Salla, I love you, I respect you, and I'm so happy that you're in my life. I'm so grateful to you, and thank you for playing with me today and sharing more of who you be and the great work that JP has also brought to our planet. And to you guys watching, wow, I know you're going to enjoy this. You might need to watch it a couple of times. There's just so much in the information that Dr. Salla has dropped here. Again, his webinars are available and his many books. And this is the one for me that I would recommend you get. It has the most up-to-date missions, but there is also a part 1 to the US Insider missions too. Everything on Amazon. So until next time, you guys, I look forward to seeing you and sharing more information of disclosure and what's happening on our planet. My name is Dani Henderson. I send you my love, and I will see you soon.